The Trump administration announced that they're planning to enforce a large scale reduction in force. And according to the OPM, which is like the biggest human resources agency for the federal government, announced that over 75,000 federal employees have accepted the Trump administration's deferred resignation offer. They're also looking to cut additional federal employees. And there's a lot of fear and chaos in the federal workforce that I have, quite frankly, never seen before. And in my veteran community, I personally know people who have accepted the offer to leave the federal government. The most common questions my friends and my clients ask me are what they should do with their TSP. I also received several emails from my audience about their fear of keeping their money in their TSP while they're still employed with the federal government and whether they should keep their money in the TSP or take it out completely by doing a hardship withdrawal. Please do not take out your TSP if you're not over the age of 59 and a half. The tax consequences are just too severe, and that action will significantly delay your retirement. So, whether you have already left the federal workforce or you're still with the federal government, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I would do if I were in your shoes. Should I leave my retirement in the TSP or should I move it over to my IRA or should I roll it over to my new job's 401k? What if I have a TSP loan open? You want to do this correctly because one mistake could cost you thousands in taxes and penalties. You didn't spend years building this up just to fumble the bag at the finish line, right? So option number one is to simply leave it in the TSP. But the question I received was, what if Doge tries to get into the TSP and take the money away? Listen, if the government starts taking money from their employees, this country will be in a serious financial crisis. Remember, the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, or FRTIB, is an independent agency that manages the TSP. Your TSP account is like having a 401k with your employer. If the company you work for goes bankrupt, the money inside the 401k still belongs to you because you contributed to it. If you leave the federal government, your money inside the TSP still belongs to you. The only exception is the employer match. And take a look at this TSP screenshot. And this screenshot doesn't belong to anyone because it's just for educational purposes only. If you look inside your TSP here and click on contributions, you're going to see several different contributions here and earnings, right? The match where it says $20,000 here is what you get to keep no matter how many years you've served. The auto 1% that says 3 years right here, on the other hand, is where the vesting schedule lives. And this screenshot requires you to serve at least 3 years to have that 1% match fully invested, right? And keep in mind that the agency automatic 1% contributions and the match are going to be in the pre tax portion or the traditional portion of your TSP. And for most first employees, the TSP vesting schedule is right here where it says 3 years. And some of you might just need 2 years if your TSP vesting code is 2. In that case, it'll say 2 years right next to it. So if you separate from the federal service before meeting the TSP vesting requirement, the agency automatic 1% contributions and whatever earnings that came with them will automatically get given back to the TSP. So if you were on probation with less than 2 years in service, you just got let go. That 1% of your TSP is what you're going to lose. And right here is your contributions to traditional or Roth or a combination of both. You get to keep both of them no matter what happens to your employment status. If you still want to keep them in there, you can still keep them invested in the CSIG or F funds, or maybe you have it in a target date fund. That money will continue to grow inside your TSP based on what the stock market is doing. That makes sense so far, right? And you can go to firesightchat.com/resources to check out the TSP price tracker there if you want to. And down at the bottom is where you'll find your Roth contributions. This is the money you paid in after tax dollars or Roth dollars. And if you got terminated already, you need to write this amount down because this is the money you already paid taxes on. So if you roll it over to your Roth IRA, this is the money that you'll have access to when you meet the 5-year Roth contribution rule, which I'll go over later on briefly in this video. And look, if you don't know me, because this is your first time tuning into my channel, I served in the Air Force for 20 years and I still have my money sitting in my TSP. And my reason is different though, because I have what's called a combat zone tax exempt TSP contributions that are treated like the combination of a traditional TSP and a Roth TSP. I cannot move it to my Roth IRA because IRAs don't recognize the combat zone tax exemption. If you also have that, it's best to leave it in there if you're a member of the armed forces. And the other reason to keep it in the TSP is because of how cheap the TSP is. The 401k in the private sector is much more expensive if you leave it in the 401k, but the TSP is really cheap to maintain. And that's why I don't mind leaving it in there. The other reason you want to leave it in there is if you're a high income earner doing a backdoor Roth IRA conversion every year, then you want to keep the traditional TSP in traditional TSP so that you don't get hit by the pro rata rule. You can check out my backdoor Roth IRA video on my channel that my editor will put somewhere on the screen. And option number 2 is to roll it into an IRA, but keep in mind that you cannot do this until you have left the federal government, and your TSP account has to show your status as separated from the workforce. And you can check the status of that by going to your TSP account and clicking on your profile. That's where it's going to show you whether you're active or separated. It's going to take about 30 to 60 days to show that you're separated. So if you're on paid leave right now, you cannot move money out of a TSP because technically you're still being paid by the federal government. That makes sense so far, right? Now, remember what I said earlier. If you're doing the backdoor Roth IRA conversion every year, then I don't recommend moving your traditional TSP to your traditional IRA because it's going to trigger a taxable event every time you do a backdoor Roth IRA conversion. But if you don't think you'll do a backdoor Roth IRA every year, then you can consider rolling your TSP into an IRA to have way more investment choices like stocks, bonds, real estate funds, and ETFs. You don't have those options with the TSP core account. So here's how it works. If you roll your TSP into a traditional IRA, then there will be no taxes and no penalties. It's a direct transfer. It's the same thing if you do roll your TSP into a Roth IRA. You do not owe any taxes or penalties because, again, it is a direct transfer. If you decide to move your traditional TSP to your Roth IRA, then it's going to become a Roth conversion and you're going to owe federal and state income taxes in the following year. So if you do it now in February 2025, then you're going to pay the income taxes by the tax deadline in 2026. But you also need to be aware of the 5-year conversion rule. You have to wait 5 years and be 59 and a half to have access to your Roth IRA conversion that you made from your traditional TSP. I did a detailed video on the 5-year rule that just came out a few days ago. So be sure to check it out when you get a chance, because if you take the Roth conversion out before 5 years is up or not being 59 and a half, then there's going to be a 10% penalty imposed on the Roth IRA conversion. Now, would I do this? It depends. My personal finance is not the same as your personal finance. And I only moved the Roth portion of my TSP to my Roth IRA, but I left the traditional portion of my TSP with the TSP. And I love having control over my money, and a Roth IRA gives me way more flexibility. And in fact, when I left the previous job, I rolled my 401k into an IRA, which allowed me to invest in high growth index funds and ETFs that were not available in my employer plan. And I also took advantage of a Roth conversion strategy over several years to minimize my tax burden while growing my money tax-free. Now, let's say you've landed a new job and they offer a 401k plan. Can you roll your TSP into it? Most of the time, yes. You have to ask your new employer's 401k plan to find out if they'll accept rollovers. The big question is, should you? And here's why it might be a smart move. If your new employer's plan has great investment options and low fees, rolling your TSP into it can keep things simple. Instead of juggling multiple retirement accounts, you have just one place to track your money, manage your investments, and check your balance. Plus, your savings continue to grow tax deferred or tax free, meaning you don't owe taxes on the rollovers. And let's be real, fewer accounts means fewer logins to remember, and which is a win itself. But there's a catch. Not all 401k plans are created equal. Some have limited investment choices, or worse, sky high fees that eat into your returns. If your new plan charges outrageous fees or lacks the flexibility you want, you might be better off rolling your TSP into an IRA instead of keeping that money into your TSP. And Another thing to keep in mind is that TSP is the only one that has the CSIG and F funds. So when you make the rollover, TSP will sell your shares in those index funds and then do a direct or indirect rollover to your new 401k. And remember, a direct rollover is better than an indirect rollover. So just have to check directly sent from your TSP to your new 401k. So what are the additional pros and cons of rolling your TSP into a 401k? Check and see if your new 401k plan comes with a rule of 55, which means that you can retire at the age of 55 and take a traditional 401k out early without a penalty. And if you're still young, you can move money out of your TSP and put it in your 401k so that you don't have to wait until you're 59 and a half to have access to your TSP. You now have the possibility to retire early at the age of 55 by combining your TSP and 401k. And that is the power of having the rule of 55 with your new 401k. So be sure to talk to your new company's HR to find out if the rule of 55 is available in your new 401k. And the downside of it, you're at the mercy of your new employer's plan. So if the fees are high and the options are bad, you're stuck with a less than ideal investment vehicle. And you need to pay attention to the fees with the new 401k. And I've seen fees as high as 1.75%. That is ridiculous. And it could eat into your annual profit. So would I do this? Honestly, it depends. If the new 401k is a rock star that comes with a rule of 55 and low fees and great choices, sure. But one of the most popular options is to move your traditional TSP to your traditional 401k to get the rule of 55 and move your Roth TSP to your Roth IRA to have access to your Roth contributions inside your Roth IRA. It just entirely depends on your age and how far out you are from retirement. And remember, once you move your Roth TSP to your Roth IRA, you cannot move it back. You can with the traditional IRA, but not with the Roth IRA. Once you finish that transfer, that money will stay in your Roth IRA forever. But what if you have a TSP loan open right now? And keep in mind that you cannot take out a TSP loan once you separate from the federal workforce. And let me show you this PDF directly from the TSP website. Just go to page 14 and I'm going to walk you through this. And I'll put this link in the description below. TSP is very unique when it comes to the loan because it's much more flexible compared to the 401k loan in the private sector. And I took out a TSP loan back in 2013 and paid everything off by 2015. I'm never going to do that again. It's really not worth it. But anyway, let's say you have $10,000 in a TSP loan right now. And once you leave the federal service, it means that you're not going to have any direct deduction from your paycheck, right? So instead, you can continue to make payments directly from your checking account. But be sure to have a plan to pay the loan off, because if you do not pay off the TSP loan, TSP is going to take out whatever balance you have left in your TSP and then charge you a 10% penalty. And then you'll have to pay the income taxes for the early distributions in the following tax year. So let's just say that you don't repay that $10,000 in TSP loan. Then the TSP will take out $10,000 from your remaining TSP balance as an early withdrawal. And then you're going to get penalized 10%. Taxed federal income tax, state income tax, and you could easily lose 40% of that $10,000 in taxes and penalties if you don't pay it off. Again, you do not want your TSP loan to get foreclosed on. Those taxes and penalties could hurt your retirement timeline in a very wrong way. But what if you got notified that you're getting laid off? Should you take out a loan against your TSP before you get terminated? The answer is actually, it depends. You have to understand that taking out your TSP loan is going to hurt your retirement in the next 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. You're also going to have to repay that loan after you leave the federal workforce. But if you're in a situation where you cannot eat or you're about to lose your house, then you may need to do what's necessary to not become homeless. But this needs to be your very last resort. Your retirement account is meant to be left alone. So let me show you some steps I would take now if you're getting ready to be laid off. First, change your TSP contribution rate to just 5% so that you're still getting that employer match while you're still working. Second, go through your budget now and divide what's discretionary and what's non-discretionary. How much do you need every month to survive? You gotta hunker down. And that would be your groceries, housing, utilities, transportation, and insurance. And that's the priority order. Third, if you're in debt, call your lenders and credit card companies to ask if they can put a forbearance on your minimum payments for something like 3 months so that you can free up some of your cash flow to put it in an emergency fund. Fourth, you need to load up every dollar into an emergency fund. How much you need in there will depend on your expenses from step number two and how long you think you'll be unemployed for. Fifth, while you still have active health insurance, schedule your doctor's appointments now and refill any prescriptions that are close to running out. You want to do this while you're still covered. Six, find out if you're going to receive a severance package or unemployment compensation. And as you should, because you're being involuntarily separated from the federal workforce, then you need to calculate how much of that can cover your overall expenses. Seventh, get your SF50 from the HR office within your agency. Don't wait on it. Eighth, make sure to download all of your pay stubs, insurance information, and your most recent W 2. Those documents are going to help when you apply for unemployment benefits. And ninth, reach out to your supervisor and get their personal contact information as a reference on your resume to help you network for your next job. 10th, start working on your resume and start thinking about your skills that you can apply to a different job sector. Listen, some of you watching this may be feeling anxious about your future. Now, I want you to take a deep breath with me and calm your nerves because we don't make good decisions when we're panicking. And remember, your TSP is not just another retirement account, it's the second biggest financial asset you own next to your home. And what you do with it when leaving the federal government can have a major impact on your future. You've spent years building it up. So don't make a rushed decision. Take your time, explore all your options, and choose the path that best aligns with your long term financial goals. The right move now can lead to a more secure and comfortable retirement down the road.